This is Building a Creative Life. I'm Pam Vale, a New England artist, bringing the world of creativity to your door through casual conversations with artists, creators, and everyday people, helping curious, midlife women begin their next creative chapter. I'm glad you're here. Let's get started. Today I'm talking with Milena Milak, a digital illustrator, storyteller, and former tech designer whose work explores themes of solitude, imagination, empathy, and wonder. Mila shares what it's like to create with the neurodivergent brain, how she blends analog and digital tools like Procreate and Notion, and why she believes creativity isn't about perfection, it's about showing up. We talk about sketchbooks, digital art, transitioning from tech into illustration, and so much more. Make sure you listen all the way through because at the end of the episode, I'll be sharing some reflections that apply directly to your own creative path. Well, hello, Mila. Welcome to the show. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm excited to talk to you. I'm a fan of what I've seen of your work on your social media and Substack. And I
Thank you.
know, I know that we share something in common, that we both do digital art. And I would love it if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and about what you do.
Right. So my name is Mila. I'm Polish, but I'm based in Spain for the last 10 years. I lived in Barcelona. Um, I'm an ex-UX designer. I quit my job 2 years ago. And for the last 2 years, I've been trying to develop children book portfolio and get work in publishing. Before working as a UX designer,
What is that? What is a UX?
UX design is designing interfaces of websites and applications. So it's a tech job pretty much. I worked at a startup and then at a different company. So sort of like a pretty technical aspect of designing. And before that, I worked as a graphic designer as well. And I also worked as a tattoo artist at some point. But I made a switch in 2020 because of the pandemic, because obviously the job was just no longer there. So that's sort of my career path. And yeah, I think that's it. I mean, I'm a digital artist, but I would also consider myself a sketchbook artist. For the last few months, I've been very focused on my sketchbook practice. I share tips and some insights into what it's like to build a children book portfolio, learn how to illustrate books, what sort of illustrations, styles, character design is being needed for that kind of portfolio, and also what I know about Procreate and any other traditional techniques I use in my sketchbook.
I'm excited to talk about Procreate and other digital options for people as creative outlets. And I wonder, so the fact that you were in a tech industry, even though you were doing something creative, is that where you learned your digital skills? Was it for that you learned?
No, I've been working as an illustrator, but never full time, on and off for pretty much the last 20 years. I would work on some small client work. Sometimes I would work with an advertising agencies, doing some branding work as well, which included illustration. I learned how to use iPad specifically and Procreate because of my tattoo artist job. Before that, I was always using my computer and a graphic tablet, but iPad was just, much more convenient at that
Mm-hmm.
kind of work because I could use it with a client. I could, make changes on the spot. So I would say late 2018, I think, is when I discovered iPad, and I was one of the first iPad pros with the Apple Pencil.
And with the tattoo design, did you actually do the tattooing or did you create art for
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
did?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. That was a component that I had creatively for a short period of time where I designed custom tattoos. I didn't do the tattooing, but I designed, and
Yeah.
the fact that, programs like Procreate, or I use Fresco on the iPad because I use Adobe products. It's just opened up this whole world. It's so,
Absolutely.
oh my goodness. It just gives you so many options. And like you said, it's mobile. So you can like do it with a client right there and make things,
Yeah.
changes instantly. It's incredible, I find. And even something like Canva, has also opened up a world for people that don't have those skills
Oh,
automatically.
absolutely. I'm a graphic designer, and Canva is it's sort of like frowned upon by graphic designers
Hmm.
because it's not considered a professional tool. But I actually love Canva, and I
Hmm.
use it for pretty much most of my digital work, any like social media assets. I
Hmm.
can't really consider it a professional tool for any sort of a graphic design,
Hmm.
or I wouldn't use it for print, but for what I use it for designing Instagram posts or Substack posts, I think there's just nothing better than
No,
Canva.
it's so user friendly. And a lot of the people that I speak to and a lot of the women I speak to are just sort of beginning their creative journey, or maybe they're coming back to it after, life and children and work
Yeah.
and all of that. And so I feel like having these tools, it it lets them explore things that they couldn't have, like, even 5 or 6 years ago, or maybe when
Absolutely.
they were younger. Um, do you have any other like formal or informal creative education that's sort of gotten you to where you are right now?
No, not really. I'm actually a college dropout. I just never graduated. I did I did went to college, but I never graduated, which, as a late diagnosed ADHD, that's sort of like the answer.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't really have a formal education in arts. I did have an arts tutor, uh, with whom I was working for like approximately a year and a half. Sometime by the end of my previous job, and then for the few months after I quit. So that sort of gave me a little bit of that technical background, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't have a diploma.
What does that look like, having an arts tutor? Like, what does that mean?
It's exciting, and honestly, I would recommend it to anyone who can obviously afford it. But it was pretty much like having one-on-one lectures, and sort of like one-on-one school setting. I was being given a little bit of a lecture, and then some like technical knowledge, and then I would have approximately 2 weeks to do my homework. Then we would meet again. It was all via Zoom, by the way, so
Oh,
it was all
wow.
online. Yeah, incredible that you can actually do that. And yeah, and then he would just give me critique on my work and show me how I can improve it. And yeah,
And did
I honestly,
did you feel like, even though you were virtual, did you feel like you got that connection of support for your creative exploration?
yes, absolutely. However, I, I am, and I was very used to working online because my job was remote as well. So for me, having meetings on Zoom was, something I would do every day anyway. And I never met some of my colleagues in person. So I think a lot of it is that just being sort of, feeling comfortable with online, with video calls.
Hmm.
I remember at first when I had to like get myself accustomed to it, and that was still Skype, not Zoom.
Right.
It didn't feel as comfortable as it does now. So
Yeah.
that could be a downside, but for me, it worked very well, and um, yeah, I would definitely recommend it.
And it gives people access to so much more variety and choice, right? Because they're not
Yeah,
limited to what's in their location.
absolutely. The artist I worked with was based in Italy, in Florence. So he had a very sort of, traditional education in arts. So he taught me a lot about, still nature and life drawing and all these aspects that are being taught in art school. But from like a one-on-one, in like this one-on-one setting, it was just, I felt like with each lesson, I learned so much.
Yeah, I would think number one, it would be a time saver, right? Because it's accelerated and it's so targeted. Plus, I don't know, were you able to follow your specific uh, desires or interests or likes more so than if you were in like a more traditional setting? Or was it based on what he wanted you to do?
And I actually did ask him for like a sort of like a very formal way of teaching. I wanted him to teach me as if I was an art student. So we did all the art school sort of basics. I wasn't as much focused on practicing my illustration skills or like even character design skills because as anyway, this was not his skill set. He taught me all these sort of classical painting and drawing techniques that I later on used to develop my portfolio. But I just really wanted to have that that base that I never had a chance to learn before, even though I worked as an illustrator. I was just not trained in that sort of classical sense. And I always wanted to, and I
Yeah.
always wanted to learn. So it was definitely more of like a, art academia sort of program, mostly still nature at first, and then some figure drawing.
And it shows you how important it is to have a good foundation and how those
Yeah.
skills, transfer or filter into whatever you do. Because when people, I will put all your contact information and everything in the show notes so that people can go see your beautiful artwork. But if you think about like traditional Italian art or still lifes or nature. And then you look at the kind of art that you do, it's such a leap, but it shows that,
Absolutely.
everything is used, right? You store it and it comes out in your own way. And I know you mentioned about ADHD, and I know that the word neurodivergent is used a lot right now, especially with creatives and especially on Substack. I mean, everybody kind of describes themselves like that. And I would love for you to, if you can sort of simplify that for our listeners, and explain what that means for you and how that comes out for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, well, first of all, I think I want to say that I'm personally a big fan of umbrella terms. That's why I prefer to use
Mm-hmm.
the neurodivergent term than ADHD. Well, in my case, it's ODHD, which is the intersection of autism and ADHD. Uh, just because I don't like, being labeled and constrained as much. But on the other hand, the reason I label myself as neurodivergent and the reason I share anything about it is because I feel that through my experience, maybe I could help someone else. Um, because of just the ways and systems I learned of how to navigate my neurodivergence. But in my case specifically, um, I would say the main challenge for me is to find the urge and the fire to do things if they don't seem very interesting. And that's sort of like the very like foundation of ADHD brain. That if for some, sometimes unknown reason my brain doesn't find something interesting, it takes a lot of extra effort to learn to do that and to do it consecutively, which is another problem with neurodivergence. It's very easy to start, but it's very hard to stick to something. So that's what I've been always struggling with, and it kind of shows in like the last 10 years of my professional career because this is my third career in a decade, which unfortunately, is just a good example of how it's really hard to stick to that one thing you wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So that's sort of my experience. Then another thing is the attention deficit disorder, which I struggle with as well. And then there's something you could call neurodivergent thinking, which is just very non-linear. And I think I never realized I had that until I was diagnosed. And then I realized all of my friends are neurodivergent as well, which is apparently happens
It's
to a lot
common.
of people. And the way we talk to each other, the way we communicate is just sometimes, it's more about linking than going, from A to B
Hmm.
to C. And I often struggle with expressing my thoughts because I know I need to translate them to like a non-neurodivergent, way of thinking. Because for me, like it just some aspects, some context, some things, they just click in my head, but they don't necessarily have to click for someone else.
Hmm.
So just being able to, put your thoughts together in like you know, a way that someone can understand it, especially because I speak my second language. So you also have that, right? That other
Yeah.
layer. That can be challenging. So I'm trying to be mindful of that. So whenever I post something on Substack, I definitely, I proofread a lot just to make sure that it makes sense.
That's a great point. And I think I feel like it's so wonderful when people talk about this because I think that a lot of people, especially maybe that aren't in a creative profession, who are trying to find creative outlets or hobbies or personal self-expression at midlife when they're having other transitions, might not realize that there's these other ways of thinking and processing, right? Because when I was younger, this was not talked about, right? We didn't, unless you went to some kind of alternative school, like my son went through a Montessori program, which was a little more accepting or aware. You were just expected to think linear and you were expected to grasp abstract concepts without having a concrete connection to something and all of these
Absolutely.
things. So I feel like when women especially get to this stage and we've you know been caretakers and we've built a career and we've done all this, raised a family, whatever, we've done all this stuff, like we don't realize maybe we think different, or maybe there's another way to process things or communicate with your friends. Like I totally
Absolutely.
understand that, I get that. So do you, I know I saw that you use Notion. I
Yeah.
am obsessed with Notion. I just
Yeah.
found it.
Yeah.
Oh my God. I found it in, I want to say like March when I started the podcast. And I, I don't know what I did without Notion.
Absolutely. I'm such a fan girl. I mean, I can't imagine my creative practice. I can't imagine my life, but I can't imagine my creative practice without it,
Absolutely.
especially if you're planning on doing more than one thing. Like in my case, I have Instagram, I have Substack, I have my newsletter, I have my blog. Then sometimes I try to post on Threads and on TikTok, and it's just like otherwise I would just get lost. Like just talking about it just makes me stressed and overwhelmed.
I agree. I find so for people that don't know, Notion is a productivity program that you can set up in different ways. I find that I love that it has very easy access. So I can access my information very quickly. It's very visual, or can be. You can set it up however you want, how I have it set up. Very visual, and it's very pretty, and you can make it look like
Yeah,
however you want it to look. So
yeah, yeah.
highly, highly recommend that. Are there, do you design templates for Notion, or do you,
Um, I I did for myself,
yep,
and I am planning on selling one I've designed because I think it's pretty robust and I think it solves quite a lot of problems for someone who wants to be consistent with content planning and like career planning. Uh, but it's not out yet.
okay,
I'm planning to release it in October. But yeah, I'm very passionate about just building templates in general
yeah,
because that was a part of my job as a UX designer as well.
I see. Do you have other tools that you use to help you in your business or even just personally with your creative projects?
Yeah, I use Bullet Planner.
Mm,
There's this sort of like framework of keeping a monthly journal where you plan your month and then you can sort of like go back to it by the beginning of the next month and see how much you've achieved, how much you have left to do. You can sort of reflect. I do weekly logs, so usually on the weekends I just write down a little bit of like how I felt, maybe what I achieved, what I didn't, what I plan to do. So that really helps. I think again with ADHD brain, there's definitely an issue of that. I mean, I can't really compare it, right? Because I that's the only way I know, but they say that we experience time a little bit different, that, there's just really difficult for us to understand the passing of time and
Hmm.
how far or how close we are on the timeline. So it really helps me to look back, and I often feel like I haven't done as much, but then I open my bullet journal from like 6 months ago, and I've realized that everything I had on that list is actually done like a long time ago. I already forgot about it. So I think it's just definitely, it helps me to be accountable, but it also gives me a little bit like that extra confidence. Like it kind of like, helps me to see in a more visual form that I
Hmm.
actually haven't been slacking off as much as I have. It's just that I don't remember.
Yeah, I think it's a good reminder for people because I think that's a very common thing, whether you have ADHD or not. I feel like it's very easy to not see how far we've come. I know I do that, and I have to have visual reminders of, my progress. And I also think that sometimes we can lessen our contribution, like,
Absolutely.
especially if it comes easy. I was talking to another creative on the podcast, and, you know, she was talking about how she was going to be teaching something that came naturally to her. And so it's easy to discount it if it's something that comes naturally to us, even though it is an accomplishment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I agree. Yeah.
Um, I would love it if you could talk a little bit about your analog days and what that means to you, and just the difference between having like the digital creative outlet versus your sketchbook, and why they're equally important to you.
Hmm. Yeah. So starting with the analog day, it's sort of it's a concept I came up with for myself first, and then I turned it into a Substack sort of initiative, if I can call it that way. I'm just trying to be very mindful of the time I spend with my phone, with my computer, with my iPad, which I just call, again, an umbrella term. I just call them screens. That could be a TV as well, if I'm honest, but um, it's not as engaging. Um, so it's pretty much that. It's just trying to stay away from being constantly engaged, I think, which everyone struggles with these days. But from my like neurodivergent point of view, I feel this is something I'm seeking because ADHD brain needs that dopamine kick. But on the other hand, it just overstimulates me, it overcharges me. So I ended up being just overwhelmed with as much as is going on with the world these days anyway, right? So I mean, there's only so much information you can take in. So sometime like March, I think this year, I've realized after starting my sketchbook practice that it's just very beneficial for my mental, but a little bit for the physical health as well, to put my phone away. And I often actually just I turn it off. I have another phone. I have like a spare phone where, my family can contact me or like any sort of like emergency, because I wouldn't like to be completely cut off. I mean, I need to be also responsible, right? But that main phone with like all the fancy apps and, like everything that can make me hooked, the email inbox and all of that, I just turn it off. I don't have an access to it. And I use that time mostly for sketching, which is that analog activity. But sometimes I cook. I love to cook, which is like yet another sort of like tactile and analog experience. I go for a walk, and I think that's just very helpful for me. And as for the sketchbook itself, and why I think it's important to have one, even if you work in digital, is for me specifically, is because I want my digital work to look a bit more analog and a bit more traditional. So I just need a point of reference, really. So this is why it's so important for me. But I think it's very important to, to keep that muscle memory in your hand. And it's never the same on an iPad screen. I love Procreate, I love iPad, I love digital art. I'm not against it by any means, but I think Sketchbook is just like a pillar, and it should, it should. I mean, I would like it to be a part of my practice. I wouldn't like to tell anyone else what they need to do, obviously, but I think it is important.
And I saw that you keep two sketchbooks. Do you keep two?
I actually have three.
Oh,
Yeah,
three. Okay. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
yeah. So I call them. I have a pretty one, which is the one I post on social media sometimes. It's not as pretty as, some other sketchbooks, but it's definitely like the prettiest one. Then I have a pocket one, which I don't usually share because it's more for like gestural drawing when I'm somewhere outside, and it's just for practicing that skill of just being very quick at I usually just sketch people or animals. And then I have an ugly one, which is just a cheap sketchbook, nothing fancy. It definitely cannot take anything else than, pencil and some crayons because I can't really use it with watercolors or anything. And it's just scribbles mostly. Just sometimes I need to warm up my hand. Sometimes I need to draw something like, 10 times to figure it out.
Hmm.
So that's sort of where that ugly sketchbook is very helpful, and no one can see it because it's ugly.
Do you ever go back and look through your old sketchbooks?
Yeah, absolutely. I think they work as a journal, even though I don't take notes and I don't do the visual sort of journal sketchbooking practice. I think just by looking at the sketches, I can, remember what I was going through or what I was thinking, or, sometimes it's the circumstances as well. So in a way, it is sort of like a visual language.
Which is it's a
Um,
great gift for people who maybe aren't writers or don't want to write but want to keep some kind
yeah,
of journal. I think that's great.
absolutely, yeah. I've always been more like private, so yeah, I've never had a journal as in like, writing down my life sort of journal. I think it just really helps to have that visual reminder of what I was going through.
It's also a gift, I think, for people to know that you can have different ones for different reasons, right? Like you don't it's a lot of pressure, I feel like, especially for someone who's new to this practice, to look at a beautiful new sketchbook and like start, right? I feel like it's just a lot of pressure to start, or there's expectations, especially if you don't have a history of just sort of being able to play or experiment. But I think having like the one that's just going to be whatever it is, and it might be messy and it might be nothing you ever show to anybody, you might not even want to look at it again, is like really important. And then having one that if it's a little more polished, that's a gift, I think.
I think what I do quite often as well is if I like something from that ugly sketchbook, I cut it out and
Oh.
I put it in the pretty sketchbook, and I feel like no shame about it. I mean, some of the pages are just, it's like a scrapbook. And then another thing is what I used to do as well, and I don't do it anymore, and maybe I should go back to it, is that you can keep a binder, and just keep your favorite sketches in a binder where you can take them in and out. So you don't have that pressure of, ruining a page, which I have to be honest, I kind of got rid of it. I don't mind as much because, no one has to see it. I mean, if it's an ugly page, it's an ugly page. I just flip the page and I carry on. But I understand that it is a lot of pressure. So I would actually recommend, if someone is a bit too afraid of getting, a fancy, beautiful sketchbook that is, very expensive, you can just try with a binder first and start collecting the sketches you like and have that experience of flipping through it, which I think is just like, it's extremely rewarding, I think.
Hmm. It just shows there are no rules, right? Like you can make up your rules. You can do it in anything.
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you use prompts or anything to help you get started with ideas?
No, not really. I think that kind of structure just doesn't really apply to me personally. I think what I do for my analog days is I send prompts, but I never focused on any themes or subject matters. I sort of like focus on the not the what but the how of drawing. So it's either playing with color palettes, with textures, with line work, with different mediums. That's sort of how I approach it. So some days I feel like just using my pencil, and then it doesn't really matter what I draw. It's just I'm focused on how what can I do with that pencil today? Maybe I can test some shading. Maybe I can do some lines. Maybe I can practice hatching. And then it's pretty much every time this way. I'm pretty fascinated by color, so that's what I usually go back to. I just play with like color theory.
And that is so interesting because I think that it's such a different way to look at a creative outlet that I think someone who's new, who doesn't have a background in art, might never have thought of. That it could just be inspired by the materials, right? It doesn't have to be that you want to come out with a certain image that looks like something or that has a theme, but just to play with the materials. Like I love that idea. And it's so much less pressure.
Yeah, I think again, this is a very personal opinion, but I think I just find the idea of doing a theme a bit boring. I think I would just get very bored with it, which, again, is just my need of novelty. But when I have so when I have like, a whole list of the ways I can draw in my sketchbook, when I can play with the techniques, I can play with the medium, I can explore some new concepts. Just having that whole like, it's like a whole book and I can just pick up whatever I want instead of, doing, I don't know, flowers or like botanical sketchbooks, which, they work perfectly fine for a lot of people. And there's like, and I'm sure they just love enjoying a certain theme. It's just, it doesn't really work for me. So I think it just really helped me to understand that what I need is I need novelty and I need to feel like I can play. Uh, and I don't want to feel constrained. So I think there's like ideas of doing like different letters of the alphabet, and it just doesn't really apply to me
Mm.
specifically.
And I think that people can have like having the expectation of what something should look like or not meeting those expectations can really like dampen creative
Yeah,
energy, right? Because they think it has to
absolutely.
end up looking like something specific.
And then you have also like decision paralysis, right? Like you have to choose the reference, for example. So that's sort of that would have stopped me from sketching for a long time because I would spend like 15 minutes and I would be like, nothing is good. I don't like anything. But if you go at it with the approach today, I'm just using an orange crayon or whatever. Then you're like, it doesn't really matter what I draw. I just want to see how that orange is going to look like. You just build that anticipation before you even start and you're like excited because that's what I'm exploring today. So I think, again, that's what works for me.
And it leaves the outcome wide open. So you're
Yeah,
not trying to like
absolutely.
reach some goal that you've,
No.
set for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what goal is in like exploring the orange crayon? I mean, no matter what you do, you've already done it. You've explored it, right? It doesn't matter what you draw.
Right.
So I think that really helps with just like getting a bit too stressed with like choosing the object.
Absolutely. And for people that don't know about digital art, what do you think, like, what are some misconceptions that someone new to creative outlets would have about the availability of digital art?
Um, that's a good question because I have been doing digital art for so long, I don't even remember what it's like to start because I got my first graphic tablet in 2008, probably, which is a long time ago. So I have to be honest, I don't really know.
Do you think that it's more accessible than people think it is? Like for the average hobbyist, like especially Procreate?
Absolutely, absolutely. I think the beauty of Procreate is the access to courses and tutorials, especially on YouTube. You can just learn so much without paying anything for any courses or any tutorials. Just going to YouTube, and then you have very specific skills that are being taught on YouTube. So if you've always wanted to learn how to do botanical illustrations, all you need to do is to type in botanical illustration Procreate, and you're going to find someone showing you how to do it, right? So that's amazing. And then there's just more and more resources as well because more and more people are learning and want to share.
And
So the community, I think, of Procreate is pretty amazing.
it is amazing. And I feel like it's pretty user friendly, and you don't need like a lot of very advanced tools. You know, it's an iPad and a Apple Pencil. Is that what you use?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the fact that you have that sort of like tactile experience as well, right? That that you use your fingers when working in on the iPad screen. Because with graphic tablets, you usually need depending on the graphic tablet, but you usually need a keyboard as well, and then you need to learn the shortcuts. And also, Photoshop is just extremely overwhelming. The learning curve of Photoshop is so steep that I think even for a professional, it just you need quite a lot of time to discover how to use it.
Absolutely. But Procreate, I don't use Procreate, but the one that, Fresco that I use is very similar. But I find that the people that I know that do use Procreate feel like they have a lot of freedoms. And um, I know that you're creating digital brushes, correct?
Hmm.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so one of the things that surprised me when I started digital art, because I started as an actual more traditional artist, and digital art's been about the last 10 years, and I wasn't aware of like how many digital brushes are available, and even like
Yeah.
now it's just exploded. But just all of the different textures and different mediums you can recreate where people would never even know that it wasn't done with the original medium. And so
Yeah. It's
isn't
incredible.
it incredible? And you can switch back and forth with just a click. I find that
Yeah.
really like a lot of creative freedom in that.
Yeah. It's just the level of accessibility because not everyone holds a studio space where they can work with different mediums and materials. Some people have small children, right? So you wouldn't like any of the art materials lying around because they, at best case scenario, they wouldn't survive it, but they can also be, harmful. So yeah, just having everything in this, pretty much like tiny device. Like iPad is so powerful, right? Yet it's just really not that big. It's easy to carry. The battery lasts so long as well. That's another amazing thing. So you can use it outside the house.
Yeah. And travel with it. And, it's not like you could set up oil paints or watercolors or pastels, anywhere you are, but you have access to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I actually do remember vividly before getting an iPad, I used to travel here around Europe, sort of like backpacking. I mean, that sounds very fancy, but let's call it that way. Um, and then, I mean, I had to carry my laptop and my graphic tablet, a charger for the laptop, a pencil for the tablet, which was like pretty bulky. And I mean, it was pretty heavy, you know? And I was very poor because I was just like, backpacking in that sense that I was staying in hostels. So I mean, I had to walk a lot with a very heavy backpack. And I wish I had an iPad back then, which was like 3 or 4 times lighter than what I had to carry.
Also being able to draw directly on the iPad, like I don't know what kind of tablet you had, but I think it's called a Wacom. And so there's also a learning curve of drawing on a flat tablet, but then, it's showing up on your screen, and there's like a whole disconnect that you have to get over. And for someone who's new to creating or new to sketching or drawing or painting, like that's a whole other level of
Absolutely.
restriction, or resistance.
Hmm.
So being able
Yeah,
to
that's
draw
true.
right on it. Do you do any kind of do you use not a filter? What's the thing that makes it feel more
Purple
like
like,
paper? Yeah, do you do anything like that or
purple like. I did try it years ago, but I did not like what it was sort of like affecting the quality of the screen. I felt the resolution was just like lower because of the texture of the paper light, and it was wearing off the pencil quite a lot in my case. So I actually haven't used it in many years now, probably like 6 or 7 years. So I don't know, maybe they make them different now. But my experience just was not that great. I wasn't happy with it, so I never used it ever since.
Yeah, I don't use it either. I don't mind the feel of the actual iPad screen.
No, not at all.
Yeah. Are there things that you do to overcome maybe like fear or perfectionism or like step out of your comfort zone creatively that people could, use?
Hmm. Um, I think that like sort of like the turning point for me was to realize that done is better than perfect. So it's, I mean, it sounds probably like a cliche, but I think, you know, staying staying like isolated and working on something for so long and waiting for it to be perfect, and then when that thing is actually out and it's not nearly as great as we thought would be, is such a crushing experience, and it can take away so much of your energy as you go through the process, but also like that feeling, you have when it happens and it's just not as great as you thought it would be. So that has happened to me a few times, and I think ever since I'm just like, it's not done, it's not perfect, but I'm just gonna share it now, see how it resonates, and either improve it or just move on. Uh, because that's sort of like the nature of creative process anyway. I mean, I don't think anyone would like to work on something, this one thing, right, throughout the whole life. We just like we do things and they're never perfect because we're human, and then we just move on. So that's sort of how I approach it. When there comes a moment when I start feeling too insecure and too perfectionist about something and don't feel like sharing it, that's exactly when I share it. Sometimes I make a comment saying it's not exactly what I expected, and maybe you could share your feedback. And I think that feedback is actually like just the best tool that we can use, I think, because that's the only way we can improve.
Right. And sometimes we're too close to it to see.
Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I loved hearing about your story.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful for Substack and I'm so grateful for the internet that we get to connect. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you want to add?
No, I feel like we have actually covered everything. Yeah. Thank you so much. Very thoughtful questions and very
Awesome.
interesting conversation.
Oh, it was my pleasure, and I look forward to staying in touch. And like I said, I'll put all your contact
Likewise.
information in the show notes so people can find you and see what you're doing and see your brushes and all of your projects,
Oh,
and
thank you.
definitely your Notion template. I'll be looking for that. And yeah, thank you so
Happy to
much
hear.
for joining me today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
What I love most about this conversation with Mila is how grounded and real it felt. She reminds us that creativity isn't something we arrive at, it's something we live with. It evolves with us. Her story of moving from tech into illustration, of using digital tools to support rather than replace tactile experiences, of embracing how her neurodivergent brain works instead of fighting it, offers such a helpful model for anyone navigating their own creative path. I especially resonated with her idea that done is better than perfect. I think so many of us get stuck waiting to feel ready or polished or confident enough to start. And hearing her describe how she gently explores without pressure made me think about how creativity doesn't require a big leap. It just asks for a step. And the idea of having multiple sketchbooks for different moods or projects, that's such a beautiful permission slip. You don't have to streamline your process into one clean system. You get to follow your curiosity and you get to use the tools that support your rhythm, whether that's Procreate or Notion or a pencil. If you've been trying to find your way back into creative flow, or you felt like digital art or storytelling or structure isn't accessible to you, I hope this episode reminded you that you don't have to do it one way. And as always, I leave you with this. Your creativity is valid, it matters, and it doesn't need to be perfect to be powerful. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe for free and share it with a friend. It helps others find the show and grows our community. Remember, creativity is yours to define, there are no rules, and it's never too late. Until next time.